Welcome to WiseTake.com. This is CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And yes, we are bringing you another NBA DFS podcast. And it's also the last DFS podcast before the All-Star break. Obviously, tonight's going to be the last night of games for a full week. We're not going to be back till next Thursday. I'm hoping to have a special guest for you guys next Thursday. I think it's a I don't know, 6 or 7 game slate. It's a decent sized slate. So we're trying to make some things happen when we get back from the break. I personally, during this break, I'm going to see my family down in Charleston, South Carolina. So looking forward to that. It's going to be a long drive from New Jersey, but we're going to do it, and should be a lot of fun. So last night was a lot of fun. I thought it was a great slate. I ended up playing, for those of you who were in the live show, I was big on Kaminsky, so that worked out well. I was big on Wiggins, Waiters. These are all the guys. I only make one cash lineup, so these are just the guys that made my cash lineup. There were 2 players, really just one player who really hurt me. I did play Adams, and he didn't crush it, but he didn't kill me either. I think he ended up with like 24 DraftKings points, which was a bust, certainly. I mean, I wasn't playing him thinking, that was the floor that I was thinking when I played him. And in cash games, I have the floor in mind, so it makes sense. But Hernangomez completely crapped the bed on everybody. And the funny thing is, in the morning when I was talking about the podcast, I said I don't typically like to take these guys who come out of nowhere and have these fantastic games like Hernangomez did the other day. And but with Chandler out, it just seemed like it was just a fair move. And I read earlier in the day that they said they weren't going to play Plumlee with Jokic, and they said he was just going to serve as a backup to Jokic, and he wasn't going to play too many minutes. That ended up not being the case. I don't know about the minutes, but he ended up starting the game with Jokic, so that kind of threw everything up because that meant that Wiggins was going to be covering Hernangomez, and that's not a situation where I want Hernangomez. I wanted Hernangomez against either Cat or Dang or Jang, whoever would have been covering him. And instead, we got Wiggins' defense, which is not what we were looking for. He's a pretty good defender. Wiggins in a back-to-back, I did mention that in back-to-backs, he's done well. If you look at his statistics in back-to-back, he's done pretty well. He's a young guy. It makes sense. And with Levine out, Wiggins is getting ridiculous amounts of usage. I think a lot of people just assume that Cat would pick up that usage, but if you look at the statistics, you look at the numbers, that's not the case. Wiggins is actually the one who gets the largest boost by far out of anybody on that team. And if you look at his game logs recently, he's really shown that. It's kind of came to fruition. So in the cash games and GPPs, I didn't fare all that well. I did lose a little bit of money, not much. I think I lost maybe like 12, not even actually, because I ended up placing in a big $12 single entry. So I probably broke even on GPPs. Maybe I made like $5. But in cash games, I did win all my cash games. That was awesome. I posted a little thing on Twitter to show you how close. I've been cashing in these cash games for a few days straight, and these last 2 days it was close. It's definitely close, and Hernangomez was a big reason for that. The good thing about Hernangomez in cash games last night was most people had Hernangomez, so I think that even though he definitely dudded and he burned us, he burned pretty much everybody, so it didn't kill you to have him, and that's why in cash games you can't be too concerned with finding players who are low owned. I'm not concerned about ownership in cash games. What I'm concerned about is finding guys who are safe and have a low floor. I'm looking for everybody to hit their value or surpass their value minimum. And there's a couple of things that didn't pan out well. Like Barton didn't start. He did well. He did fine. But at his price, I was hoping that he was going to get a start and get a run and have a chance of putting up 40 or 50. He didn't come close. I think he had like 33, 35, something like that. But either way, you do what you got to do, and it was done. On the live show, we talked about McConnell. He headed my cash games for sure. We also talked about I was asked who my favorite studs were, and I said Jokic and Westbrook. Jokic didn't do all that well. He didn't do terrible. I think he got 50 DraftKings points, but obviously that there was a lot of players who outperformed him at a cheaper price. But Westbrook, man, stole the show. We said a triple-double was in his future, and I think by the third quarter he had a triple-double. And despite the fact that his team started off horribly, they really did. They started off the game horribly. I think at one point it was like 16-2 or 12-14-2, something. The Knicks were killing him in the beginning, but just like every other Knicks game, they could jump ahead, don't matter. No lead is safe with the New York Knicks. And Westbrook did his thing. Ended up being the top stud of the night. And James Harden got 77 DraftKings points. We mentioned, I don't know what his ownership was, but we did talk on the live show about how his ownership might be a little low tonight. For the fact that it's a large slate, and on a 14-game slate, it's hard to really have anybody super chalky unless your name is Hernan Gomez. and and two, because even for my own, I said myself, I probably wouldn't play Harden, because if I'm going to get all the way to Harden, I would rather pay up the rest of it and go to Westbrook, because Westbrook is a higher raw projection player anyway. And he was in just as good of a matchup, not to mention he was home. So don't get me wrong, Harden had all those things going for him. He had a phenomenal game, 77.5. In that, I did pick somebody from. I went with waiters from that game. I was big on waiters, and for you guys who have been listening to the podcast, you know I'm pretty big on waiters. It's not that I think he's some great, outstanding player. That's why I went. But the guy just told us he's going to keep shooting. The guy just told us he's going to keep shooting. In a spot against Houston, there's going to be more opportunities because it's a pace up. Houston's one of the fastest paced teams in the league, and they don't play defense. They don't. So it was a phenomenal spot for waiters, and I even thought he would have an even better game than he did. And I think he did get me the 40 plus DraftKings points, but I was expecting him to have an even bigger one. On the live show, I know a lot of you guys were talking about Marcus Smart, and I thought he was a great cash game play too. I thought that I didn't expect him to put up 51. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think his upside was that great, but I did mention I liked him. I didn't put him in my cash game just because I didn't have room for him, but he had a phenomenal game. And his price was outstanding. We talked about with Jaylen Brown out, Marcus Smart was going to get a lot of minutes. We did mention that. We went over the fact that he was going to start at the 2, he was going to back up to 3, and at times he could even back up to 1. So we did know that Smart was going to get a lot of minutes. It was just a matter of what can he do with those minutes when you consider the fact that his shooting this season has been absolutely dreadful. And he made it count. I mean, he made it work. 50 DraftKings points is, it's not an easy thing to do. Not a lot of people could do that. And Marcus Smart just moved himself onto that list of people who can't. So I thought that was a great play. I'm not sure how Nerlens Noel's... No, I can't even say his name right. Nerlens Noel. I'm going to look him up now in my little DraftKings app here. I just want to see how he did. Waiting for that to pull up there. Okay. So evidently, I don't know how to use the app that well because it's not really telling me. Okay, here we go. Again, so he had 33.25 DraftKings points. So we did have a little conversation in the live show yesterday about Frank Kaminsky and Nerlens Noel, and I mentioned that I liked on FanDuel. I thought it made sense to pivot to Noel because he was significantly cheaper than Kaminsky. I mean, when I say significant, he was a couple $100 cheaper, but still. On DraftKings, I don't remember for sure. I think Noel might have been $100 more expensive than Kaminsky. I'm not positive, but I did mention that I thought Kaminsky was more secure, and I thought his minutes were more secure. And I'm not sure how many minutes. I wonder if it'll show me here. Okay, so yeah. He did play 31 minutes, yes. And I know that's I know one of the guys who are one of our regulars, our regular listeners, was mentioning that he felt like Noel could see 30 minutes plus because of the fact that he was starting over Okafor. Even though Okafor was playing, he was making the start. So that he was stating a case that he felt like he could have a real shot at playing 30 plus minutes. And he did. He played 31 minutes. So that was definitely a good call. However, still, I was comparing him to Kaminsky. And Kaminsky, who put up 42.25 DraftKings points with 27 actual points, he played 37 minutes. And I mentioned that I thought 35 minutes was his floor. I said he'd probably play around 35 to 38. So that was the reason I liked Kaminsky more than Noel. It wasn't because I thought Kaminsky is a better player, or it wasn't because I thought, oh, Noel's not going to play his 30 minutes, because I agreed. I said, yeah, he probably will play 30 minutes. But that's the max. You're talking 30 minutes, and in this case, he played 31. That's like his ceiling of minutes. That's the most minutes he's going to play. And he did good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing him. He did fine. And I played him in GPPs last night. I didn't play him in my cash game lineup, but I did play him in some GPPs. I actually had a choice between him or Oladipo. I chose Oladipo for my utility player on DraftKings, and it didn't make too much of a difference. They both scored around the same. Oladipo got a little over 30. I think it got 34. I'm not positive, but he was $100 cheaper, 34. So I went with him because the matchup seemed a little bit better to me, and Oladipo's minutes are secure. And in cash game, now in GPPs, you're looking for upside, and I feel like a big part of upside is minutes. But in cash games, it's so much more important in cash games to have those minutes because that's your security blanket right there. If the guy's having a terrible shooting night, if he's at least on the court, the longer he's on the court, the more opportunities he has. So rather than going 1 for 10 across 20 minutes, maybe he'll go 2 for 20 across, 40 minutes or whatever. You see what I'm saying? I mean, obviously that's a lot of minutes but you have to be in it to win it, right? That's what they say about the lotto. It's the same thing with DFS. The players have to be in the game to perform and to hit their upside and to hit their ceiling, even, and their floors even. So that was something that I thought was interesting, and yeah. So I liked Kaminsky for that reason. I locked Kaminsky. I think he was in GPPs. He was probably in like 80 or 90% of my lineups, and I don't do that a lot. I don't often lock players like that. Like even when I use the lineup builder tools and all that, I'll typically do like 5 lineups with just locking in Westbrook, 5 lineups locking in Jokic, 5 lineups locking in them both, you know what I'm saying? So I don't typically lock one player. I felt really strongly about Kaminsky. I named the podcast after him yesterday, and I was very, very happy with the result we got from him. And until they get a replacement center, now one thing I did notice, they did have somebody play, but that was because Kaminsky got into a little bit of foul trouble in the first half. Because if you notice in the second half, he pretty much kind of took over and played most of the second half. So until they find a solidified backup center for Kaminsky, he's going to continue to be a good play. I wouldn't be surprised when we come back next week after the break if Kaminsky is 65 or higher. And I get it. Is there going to be a certain point where even with those secured minutes, we can't really play him in cash games? Yeah, absolutely. I would say if he ever hits the 7s, which I'm hoping, I highly doubt he'd ever hit the 7s, but if he's over 65, for me, if he's over 65, that's going to be a point where I'm going to have to really consider. Because as much as, sometimes in a good matchup, sure, he could put those minutes to use. But there are going to be some matchups and there's going to be some games where he just can't play. He doesn't play well. So I think there is a certain point where his price is going to get kind of high. And even now, I think at 6K, I expected him to be more popular. Even on a 14-game slate, I expected him to be way more popular than he was. And he wasn't. Even in the single entry $25 double up on DraftKings, I think he was only like 33%. I expected the guy to be at least 50%. And he wasn't. So it could be because there was a lot of people in that tier. There was a lot of people in that same price range to pivot off of. There was Oladipo, there was Noel, James Johnson. There was a lot of people in spots that looked good. And like I said, for me, it was just a security thing. I went with Kaminsky because I knew he was going to get those minutes. I knew at the minimum he played 35, and even 35 is higher than some of these other players' average. But yeah, I think Denver kind of tilted a lot of people. We know how popular they've been, and they're going to be going forward. Keep that in mind. I think that they're going to be a super popular team to target against going forward, and rightfully so. They're not a good defensive team, and with Jokic in their lineup, they could score, and they have Plumlee, so we're looking at more rebound upside, more rim protection, things like that. So it's going to be fun going forward. Let's talk about we only have 2 games to talk about today. That's why I'm taking my time here. Let's see. I did want to talk about some of the top plays last night. So obviously Westbrook was the leading scorer, then Harden. How about Eric Bledsoe at 65.5? Wow. Bledsoe was obviously in an elite matchup against the Lakers, who were on a back-to-back. I didn't even talk about Bledsoe yesterday, and honestly, it was because of his price. I personally already made it in my mind that I wasn't going to pay up that high for point guard unless I was paying up for Westbrook. Westbrook was the only real top-tier point guard I paid for. I did have a few GPP lineups with Jeff Teague, but even him, he was 74. We're talking Bledsoe was 8,600. So it's not that I didn't like him. I didn't feel he wasn't on my radar just because of the fact I didn't want to pay 8,600 for him. I thought that if there were a lot of, first of all, I wanted to go more balanced in cash, which I did, and second of all, in the GPPs, like I said, it was Westbrook, Jokic. I preferred to play those guys, and I was happy with the Westbrook call, but Bledsoe 65, that's tough. I did mention Brolo on the podcast, and Giannis. Brolo outscored Giannis. Wow, I tell you what, man. As much as they say the NBA is the least volatile sport, that's still, even though it's the least volatile sport, it's obviously still very volatile. A guy like Brolo putting up 63.5 DK points while Giannis wasn't even able to hit 60. Giannis had a good game, 58.75. But I hope maybe the All-Star break will help him out a little bit because he really hasn't been all that impressive lately, Giannis. He's been good. But he hasn't been all that impressive. And I think after the All-Star break, I think people are going to remember that, and they might back off him, and it might be a good time to hop on him after that rest. Klay Thompson, 54.75. I mentioned the Golden State game was probably going to be a blowout. I said Golden State is going to come out angry. And I'm not going to lie, in the first half, I was like, oh, I was way wrong on this thing. I'm looking at the first half, and it was a tie game, and Golden State wasn't scoring, and I was just like, all right, I guess I was wrong. And at the same time, obviously, I didn't play anybody from the late games, so I'm sweating my cash games at this point. After Hernan Gomez put up a whopping 10 DraftKings points, I'm sweating here at this point. It's not guaranteed. There's 2 games going on that are high scoring, and I'm just praying that I could hold on. And luckily for me, both games ended up resulting in blowouts. So the starters didn't really have to play their full runs, and it worked out pretty well for me. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? So Klay Thompson had a monster game. It was an epic spot for him. First of all, he didn't play in the game before, so he was a little rested. And second of all, the Kings are absolutely horrible against shooting guards. There's a few teams that are really bad against shooting guards. We have obviously the Knicks, the Hawks, Sacramento. There's a few teams, but those are the 3 off the top of my head that are really struggle at covering shooting guards. It's funny because I feel like the Knicks got Courtney Lee. One of the reasons they got him was for his defense. The dude don't play it very well. He don't. And even on help defense, I find that he takes weird angles and weird approaches when he tries to help out. And oftentimes when he tries to help out from somebody penetrating, and I get why he's trying to help out, because he is supposed to be one of the better defenders, and his team, he's on a team that's horrible defensively. So we'll see him step aside to help out, but what happens is he ends up leaving his man wide open for a three-pointer, and he's not quick enough, nor tall enough, nor have the range to get over and make up for what he's done. So yeah, but anyway, I thought it was an awesome slate. That's why I spent some time talking about it. 14 games is a lot of games. So if you were able to win last night, you should pat yourself on the back. It's not easy to have 14 games in front of you and pick and choose how you win. We did like cash games obviously are even cash games. It's tough. It's hard to make those decisions. I always say I'm an indecisive person. I had to make some crucial decisions last night. And Hernan Gomez was one of them. And I was kicking myself at one point for playing that guy. I knew it. I said in the morning, you don't play a guy who's a quote-unquote scrub off the bench. And then he's a good player. I'm not calling him a scrub. I just mean that his role. He's not really a significant role player on that team. So, I mean, this is a guy that before the other day, he never played more than, 20 minutes? And that 20 minutes was a lot. So I'm not trying to rag on the guy. Him and his brother both, I think they're both phenomenal players. And they're very young. And they're going to have great careers, I think. But I should have known better than to play him. And if I didn't know they were going to start Plumlee and he was going to play the 3 instead, I definitely wouldn't have played him. And I'm not just saying that because, I was wrong about a lot of calls last night. Adams, I thought Adams was in a great spot. He did not do that well. Obviously, I played Hernan Gomez. I'm not perfect, man. I make a lot of bad calls, man. But it's part of the game. That's why we like DFS, right? Because if we knew all the answers, it wouldn't be as much fun. Yeah, you might make money, but I don't think it would be as much fun. It's fun because you're taking a chance. It's fun because you're putting your basketball skills to the test, like your knowledge and whatnot. So yeah, anyway, I guess now is a good time to go ahead and jump into this little 2-game slate we have here. So we've got Washington at Indiana. We do have some injuries on the Indiana side. I think Thaddeus Young is expected to miss the game with a what's it called? A knee, I think. I'm not even sure. Yeah, he's expected to wrist. I'm sorry. He's expected to miss. I mean, I'm sure at this point he probably could play. It's obviously probably a precaution. They probably, when these guys get hurt and they're banged up or they're sore or they're sick, they're probably gonna tell him, hey, you know what? Listen, we have one more game for the All-Star break. Just chill, take it easy, and we'll see you next week. Take a week off and enjoy. So he's gonna be off to recuperate. Lavoy Allen is questionable. He didn't play yesterday, so it makes me wonder why he would play today. I feel like he's closer to the doubtful side. He's listed as questionable with the knee, but I don't know. Obviously, that opens up room for a guy like Seraphin, who, if you played him last night, did horrible. I had him in a couple of GBP lineups. He was absolutely horrible. And as cheap as he was, couldn't come near paying off his salary. So that was obviously not a good call. But, yeah, on the Washington side, Trey Burke is probable. There's not much going on injury-wise here. Obviously, John Wall he's the guy. He's the guy that's in the best spot. He's the guy that projects the highest on a raw basis. So according to our projections, John Wall, who is 10-7 today on DraftKings, and John Wall is in a phenomenal matchup. Let's make no mistake about it. Jeff Teague is not a very good defender. I love targeting point guards against Jeff Teague, especially a guy like Wall, who, as fast as John Wall is, he's also pretty strong. So I think that bodes well for a guy like him. The question is, do you play Wall over Isaiah Thomas? Isaiah Thomas is 9,300. He's significantly cheaper. That's pretty significant. And when we look at their projected points per minute, John Wall is 1.38 while Isaiah Thomas is 1.33. So you have to decide, is that differential, and even in raw projection, John Wall projects for 50.20 DraftKings points, and that's based off 36.5 minutes. Isaiah Thomas is only projected for 34.66 minutes. This is all according to NumberFire. The minutes that we get in our projections are from NumberFire. And they're not always accurate, so feel free. That's why I put up the projected points per minute so that you can calculate your own minutes, or you can find your own minute projections, and then just multiply the minutes by the projected points per minute, which is that 1.38 or 1.33 we're talking about. So Isaiah Thomas is projected for less minutes, almost 2 full less minutes, and yet his projection for raw DraftKings points is 46.15, and we're comparing that to John Wall's 50.20. So that's a little over, just barely over 4 DraftKings points of a differential. So in your mind, is this salary difference of 10.7 to 9.3, is that big paying that high for a guy like John Wall, is that worth it? Are you paying up for, basically the question is, are you paying up for that 4 points? You know what I'm saying? And on the other side, obviously John Wall has ridiculous upside. So I think basically what I'm trying to say here is, I think in cash games, I prefer to play Isaiah Thomas. I'm not saying I'm going to play either of them. I may just try to go balance and try to find some value. We do have Jeff Teague going today, who's only 7,400. So we're not necessarily, I don't think we're forced into playing Wall or Thomas. But I think that we may, on a 2-game slate, sometimes I always say you have to buy your points. And this could be a situation where we have to buy our points. So I do think most everybody is going to go with one of these guys. And for me in cash games, I think I might prefer Isaiah Thomas, even though they just played last night and, he is expensive. His usage is going to be there with Avery Bradley still out. And he's significantly cheaper, yet he projects. And especially if we equaled out those minutes, if we felt like Isaiah Thomas was going to get 36.5 minutes like Wall's projected for, you could add another, 2.66 on top of that. So in that sense, they project for about the same. Oh, not the same, but they come pretty close. We're talking about like a differential of like 2 or less or so. So, and GPPs, it makes sense to play Wall because I think Wall does have ridiculous upside. I think we've seen Wall is capable of putting up 60. Not that Isaiah is not, but Wall has done it more often, I feel like. And Isaiah Thomas, I still think he's in a phenomenal spot. He's in a phenomenal matchup too. Who's going to cover IT2? They're obviously not going to put Jimmy Butler on him. They're going to have to use Jimmy Butler because he's a 3. They're not going to put him on the point guard. And whether Wade plays or not, I'm not really afraid of him. Michael Carter-Williams, in my opinion, and what I've seen from him, is not a very good defender. What's his name? Grant. Not scared of him. So I think IT2 isn't just now. It is a pace down spot for Boston. That's the reason I think that the Wizards side is going to be so much more popular here. But if we look at the totals, the total for the Washington game is 217. The total for the Boston game is 212. Now, we have some things to think about here. The total is higher for Washington, so that would make you think that they would want to target that game a little more, especially because people like John Wall. But the second game, the Boston-Chicago game, is actually on TNT. So perhaps people are going to want to play that in order to be able to watch their games and root for somebody on national television. So there's a lot to think about today. Obviously, guys, I think Porter's in a tough spot against Paul George. I think that Paul George is in a good spot. He's on the back-to-back. I haven't checked his numbers on how he is in back-to-back, so you might want to check that at stats.nba.com. That's all you need for stats. Look up a player, click on the player, click traditional splits, scroll until you see the rest, and it'll show you how they do on no rest, 1 day's rest, 2 days rest. They show you a plus minus, all that great stuff. So yeah, I think Markieff Morris is in a phenomenal spot. I really like Markieff Morris today. I think Gortat's in a good spot. I think on the other side of the ball, like we said, Teague is in a decent spot. I'm not crazy about targeting guys against John Wall. His defense has gotten a little better lately. Bradley Beal on the Washington side is in a phenomenal spot. He's going to be matched up with either Monta Ellis or, Glenn Robinson. I'm not really afraid of either of those guys. So that's the other side of the ball. Is I think that Washington has a few guys in pretty good spots, whereas Isaiah Thomas, there's less guys in good spots. Obviously, Horford's in a good spot, and Crowder's gonna have some tough defense on him most likely. Smart's spot isn't terrible, but after putting up 50 points last night, I'm a little skeptical to ride him in a GPP for upside. In cash games, I may go with him just because he is going to get those minutes, so it seems safe. But in a GPP, I don't know if he's going to be able to hit that 50 again. We haven't seen that from him too much this year, so the chances of him doing it back-to-back, I think, are a little slim. But in cash games, I think he's one of the safer plays because of his minutes, and especially if Wade is out, he's going to get some garbage player to cover. And he's a good defender, and he's going to get some garbage player defending him. So I think Smart is interesting in cash games today. I like IT2 on the Boston side. On the Chicago side, obviously Jimmy Butler's in an elite spot. He's going to have Crowder on him, but Butler is one guy that I don't get too worried about defensive matchup. The only thing that'll worry me not playing Butler is like Kawhi Leonard or Utah or like a slow-paced team in general. But as far as outside of Kawhi, there's not too many defenders I'm worried about. Even Paul George, who's a good defender, I would still play Butler against Paul George. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Obviously, if Wade doesn't play, you should have some value opening up. On the Chicago side, Mirotic is probable. Dwayne Wade is questionable. Paul Zipser is expected to be out. I would expect Dwayne Wade not to play just because, again, the All-Star game is coming up. It just doesn't really make too much sense for him to play at this point. You might as well just take off today, and then you have an extended little break, as if a week wasn't long enough, right? But yeah, so it's going to be a fun slate. I know we didn't talk too much about plays today. It was more just me just talking in general about DFS. It's a 2-game slate. There's not much to go through. I mean, by now, if you guys have been listening, you have an idea of how I think and you have an idea of how we do things at WiseTake. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's it. That is going to do it. That's going to wrap up the podcast for today. That's going to wrap up the podcast for the week. That's going to wrap up the podcast until next week. So we won't have any WiseTakeLIVE shows next week, obviously, because Wednesday there's no games. WiseTakeLIVE will be back the following week, the following Wednesday. And like I said, I'm going to try to have a guest on for you guys next week. I got a guy in mind. I have a couple guys that have agreed to come on here and talk. It's just a matter of the scheduling. So next week on Thursday's podcast, I'm going to try to have somebody here. Obviously, the projections aren't going to be updated until next week. They're updated for today, but they're not going to be updated till next week because there's no games. So we got a lot of time. Listen, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy All-Star break. Hopefully, you can take a break. Hey, listen, if you play hockey and golf, then you're probably still going to be busy. But if you don't, use this time to catch up with your family. Use this time to catch up with your friends. Enjoy it because basketball is a big grind. It's a serious grind. And when you have a week off like this, look at the positives. Take it as a good thing. Clear your mind. Cleanse your mind a little bit. You know what I mean? But anyway, guys, as always, I really, really, really appreciate all you guys. I thought the live show went great yesterday. We had a lot of interaction. We had people talking. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was fun for me. Hopefully, it was fun for you guys. And hey, let me know how you did. I want to know how you guys did last night. But anyway, if you like this video and you're watching on YouTube, please click that like button. Subscribe to the channel for us. We really appreciate it. If you're listening on Podbean, give us a follow. Leave us some comments. And if you're listening on iTunes, subscribe. Rate us, review us. Leave us some feedback. We love feedback. Even if it's negative feedback, man, I can handle it. Say what you got to say. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. But yeah, as always, we do appreciate it. If you're not a member of WiseTake.com, please sign up today. You get access to our free DFS projections, our free cheat sheets. We have odds charts, all kinds of tools you can use up there. We got more that we're trying to develop. Also, you get access to the forums. You can always reach out to me on the forums. We're trying to get that going. I think next week when we come back, we might try to run some kind of contest to get it going a little bit. So make sure you pay attention. And that's pretty much it, man. All I ask is that you guys you listen and you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. And listen, tell people about us. Tell other people there's some nut job that talks about DFS every day, right? Anyway, guys, like I said, that's gonna do it for us here. I said that a million times. I always have such a hard time saying goodbye. I'm never good at saying goodbyes on this podcast. Anyway, guys, as always, good luck.